Helen Blavatsky came from a very well-to-do family, and she was very intelligent. She was of Russian-German ancestry. She married a much older man, but left him eventually to travel the world and study religion and ancient history. She began to write her books, Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, and some other books as well. They were very well received at the time. With the help of a couple other men, she created the Theosophical Society that exists today. But lately, in the last 10 or so years, she seems to have been maligned greatly by many figures in the alternative media who have tried to paint her out as a satanic Freemason. Why is this? To my knowledge, I'm not even sure she was a Freemason. She may have been. But I think what it is that has gotten her in such hot water today, and even back during her time, is what she wrote about. And she specifically wrote about the Jews and the priestcrafts, such as the Catholics and the Jesuits. And she exposed them. And she exposed their God and their religion. Let's take a look at what she wrote in The Secret Doctrine. She wrote, "Hence the allegory of Prometheus, who steals the divine fire so as to allow men to proceed consciously on the path of spiritual evolution, thus transforming the most perfect of animals on earth into a potential god, making him free to take the kingdom of heaven by violence. Hence also the curse pronounced by Zeus against Prometheus, and by Jehovah Il-Debaoth against his rebellious son Satan." That is from The Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, page 244 by Helen Blavatsky in the copy of the work that I have. So she revealed that Jehovah is Zeus and Satan is Prometheus. But she wrote a whole lot more that I think gets her into trouble. So let's continue on. She wrote, "The oldest religions of the world exoterically, for the esoteric root or foundation is one, are the Indian, the Mazdian, and the Egyptian. Then comes the Chaldean. The outcome of these entirely lost to the world now, except in the disfigured Sabianism as a present rendered by the archaeologists. Then passing over a number of religions that will be mentioned later comes the Jewish, esoterically as in the Kabbalah, following in the line of the Babylonian Magism, exoterically as in Genesis and the Pentateuch, a collection of allegorical legends." Helen Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 10. Continuing on, she also wrote, "Before the reader proceeds to the consideration of the stanzas from the Book of Dizan, which form the basis of the present work, it is absolutely necessary that they should be made acquainted with a few fundamental conceptions which underlie and pervade the entire system of thought to which his attention is invited." Now that is in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 13. Continuing on, she writes, "The fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, the later being itself an aspect of the unknown root, and the obligatory pilgrimage for every soul, a spark of the former through the cycle of incarnation or necessity, in accordance with cyclic and karmic law during the whole term. In other words, no purely spiritual Buddha divine soul can have an independent conscious existence before the spark which issued from the pure essence of the universal sixth principle or the oversoul has passed through every elemental form of the phenomenal world of that Manvantara and it continues on. Now, this was The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 17 by Helen Blavatsky. Now, before I continue, Helen basically started to study Hinduism and Buddhism and combine it with her Christianity, and she became a believer in reincarnation after studying Hinduism. And she came up with a lot of different terms, yet many of her terms you'll find come from Gnosticism as well. So let's continue on and see what else she wrote. The Secret Doctrine teaches the progressive development of everything, worlds as well as atoms, and the stupendous development has neither conceivable beginning nor imaginable end. Our universe is only one of an infinite number of universes, all of them sons of necessity, because links in the great cosmic chain of the universes, each one standing in the relation of an effect as regards its predecessor, and being a cause as regards its successor. The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 43 by Helen Blavatsky. Now, it is a little bit verbose, what she wrote. And to an average person, it may sound like gibberish, but to her, she had a language which probably came, like I said, from Gnosticism and Hinduism. And she was basically trying to say that the soul existed, there were many universes out there, we're all connected, and she revealed that the Semitic religion of today was based on paganism. Zeus and Prometheus and Cronus, pretty much is what I've done. She did it based on her studies of just simply the current day religion. She didn't quote text, to my knowledge, from the Loeb Library, because the Loeb Library wasn't ready yet. It wasn't fully created yet. James Loeb was living in the 1800s and early 1900s working on it. And same thing for the British Library. So it's unknown what kind of books she had access to that I have access to and we have access to today, but she was right on track. Now, I may not 100% agree with everything she said and the way that she characterized things out of Semitic religion, but I think she was pretty much dead on. And had she had access to some of the books and discussions that I have today, she really would have done a stupendous job. It would have been nice to be, if she had been around today to talk to her. But unfortunately, like I said, she's much maligned, and I do believe it is because of what she revealed in her books. And I have done some other videos and talked about how she was revealing that the Jesuits in the Catholic Church were playing around with summoning demons. And all of the material that they were taking from people or gathering, they were playing around with it so that they had the knowledge and kept it to themselves. So let's continue on and let's look at what else she wrote that got her into trouble in today's world. She wrote, quote, "He was identified by all the Gnostics with the evil rather than with the good principle. For them he was Yildabaoth, the sons of darkness, whose mother, Sophia Achamoth, was the daughter of Sophia, the divine wisdom, the female Holy Ghost of the early Christians, Akasa, while Sophia Achamoth personified the lower astral light of ether. Yaldabaoth, or Ildabaoth, or Jehovah, is simply one of the Elam, the seven creative spirits, and one of the lower Sephiroth. He produces from himself seven other gods." So she's saying Ildabaoth is Jehovah. And for me, I've associated Jehovah with Zeus, which she seems to do as well. But she's also going to associate it, as you see in a minute, with Cronus. Now, what I just read to you came from Helen Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, pages 197 to 198 in the version that I have. So let's continue on. Here's what she wrote. Hence also the war in heaven of Michael and his host against the dragon, Jupiter, and Lucifer, Venus. When a third of the stars of the rebellious host was hurled down into space, and its place was found no more in heaven. Helen Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 202. Okay, continuing on, she wrote, with the Israelites, the chief function of Jehovah was child-giving, and the esotericism of the Bible, interpreted Kabbalistically, shows undeniably the Holy of Holies in the temple to be only the symbol of the womb. Helen Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 263. So she's revealing their symbolism and what's going on in their Holy of Holies that they keep from the rest of the people, keep the average person dumbed down so that they can have a position of power as a lying priest or rabbi or cleric. So let's continue on and see what she wrote. For his pre-Adamic races, not satanic, but simply Atlantic, and the hermaphrodites before the later, are mentioned in the Bible when read esoterically as they are in the Secret Doctrine. Helen Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 325. Now, here she's talking about hermaphrodites that were from Atlantis. Hermaphrodites consist of both male and female characteristic or sexual reproduction organs. Androgynous is just basically a combination of the male and the female, and you can't really tell what they are. They may not have sexually reproducing organs. Oftentimes the term androgynous and hermaphrodite are interchanged or confused. But it's interesting because she's associating this condition of hermaphrodism or androgyny to Atlanteans. Pre-Adamic races. So she's also revealing something very, very peculiar on this planet. We know that you have to have this male or female in this world to reproduce. So you have to have some functioning sexual organs. And if you're androgynous, that's just not going to work. You're going to have to use technology. So continuing on, she wrote, besides which even the Roman Catholic theology speaks of 70 planets that preside over the destinies of the nations of the globe, and save the erroneous application, there is more truth in the tradition than in exact modern astronomy. The 70 planets are connected with the 70 elders of the people of Israel, Numbers 11:16, because the regions of these planets are meant, not the orbs themselves, as the word 70 is a play, and a bind upon the 7 by 7 of the subdivisions. Each people and nation, as said already, has its direct watcher, guardian, and father in heaven, a planetary spirit. We are willing to leave their own national God, Jehovah, to the descendants of Israel, the worshippers of Sabaoth of Saturn. For indeed, the monads of the people chosen by him are his own, and the Bible has never made a secret of it. Only the text of the English Protestant Bible is in disagreement, as usual, with those of the Septuagint and the Vulgate. Thus, while in the former one reads in Deuteronomy 22:8-9, quote, when the Most High, not Jehovah, divided to the nations their inheritance, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel, end quote. In the Septuagint, the text reads, according to the number of the angels, planet angels, which is more concordant with the truth and fact. Moreover, all the texts agree that the Lord's, Jehovah, portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance, Deuteronomy 22:9. And this settles the question. The Lord Jehovah took for his portions Israel. What have other nations to do with that particular national deity? Let then the angel Gabriel watch over Iran, and Michael Jehovah over the Hebrews. These are not the gods of other nations. And it is difficult to see why Christians should have selected a God against whose commandment Jesus was the first one to rise in rebellion. Helen Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, pages 576 through 577. Now let's take a look at what else she wrote. She wrote, the nations born under Saturn, the Jewish, for instance, with whom he had become Jehovah, after having been held as a son of Saturn, or Ildabaoth by the Ophites, and in the book of Jasher, were eternally fighting with those born under Jupiter, Mercury, or any other planet except Saturn, Jehovah. Genealogies and prophecies notwithstanding, Jesus the initiate, or Joshua, the type form whom the historical Jesus was copied, was not of pure Jewish blood, and thus recognized no Jehovah, nor did he worship any planetary god besides his own Father, whom he knew, and with whom he communed as every high initiate does, spirit to spirit and soul to soul. Helen Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, pages 577 to 578. Okay, she just told you the Jews come from Saturn, which is Cronus. Now, she has given the title Jehovah to Saturn. I would definitely give the title Yahweh to Saturn. I'm not so sure about Jehovah, because Jehovah, to me, is more Zeus, and she compares a lot of this biblical text to Zeus as well. But I would 100% agree the Jews worship Saturn, who is Cronus. And I've already shown you in my Hidden Human Story series that Cronus instituted the practice of circumcision. And that is what these Jews and Semites are just all up on, is this circumcision nonsense, making you mutilate your baby's or child's genitals for nothing, and lie to you that it's some kind of medical practice for hygiene. What a lie. And you could go back into my other works to see that. Later on in the series, I'll reread where the practice of circumcision comes from, and that's revealed in Sanchonathan's writings. Now she continues on, and she says, I know ye are of Abraham's seed. I speak the things which I have seen with my father, and ye do the things which ye heard from your father. Ye of the works of your father, ye are of your father the devil. He was a murderer from the beginning, and stood not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When one speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for his father also is a liar, and the father thereof, etc., etc. Helen Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 578. Continuing, and I'm going to comment on that in a minute, what I just read. She says, that father of the Pharisees was Jehovah, because identical with Cain, Saturn, Vulcan, etc., the planet under which they were born, and the God whom they worshipped. Evidently, there must be an occult meaning sought in these words and admonitions, however mistranslated, since they are pronounced by one who threatened with hellfire anyone who simply his brother. Raka, fool to his brother. Matthew 5:22. Helen Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, pages 577 to 578. Okay, she says that the Jews worship Cronus, that they come from him. She identified their God as the devil. The Pharisees came from the devil. Now, she associates Jehovah with that as well. Again, I would definitely say 100% Yahweh, because of the works of Saint Jonathan will reveal, as you'll see, that Cronus was the god of the Temple of Babel situation. I'm not so sure the title Jehovah is appropriate. I would 100% say Yahweh. I think there's a distinction. But this is what she wrote, for her time. And, she didn't have all of the text like I have. And there's probably a whole lot of text out there that I don't have access to that really tell a lot more about this. But the fact that she identifies the God of the Jews as the devil, because Jesus Christ said it, very interesting, and says that he was a murderer. Yes, he was. Cronus murdered his children. He cut their heads off. He instituted the institution of human sacrifice of children. He also instituted the practice of circumcision, genital mutilation. But there's a difference. The devil versus Satan. The devil, anybody can be a devil, just an evil person. Satan is a different title, and that's an opposer. To me, Satan is more Prometheus. I think it's just a different title. And there can be also Antichrist. There are multiple Antichrists. The Antichrist, they're titles. But here she pretty much laid it out what phonies the Jews are, and that they worship Cronus, who was a murderer, and that Jesus Christ wasn't Jewish. He had a different father, God, than these Jews. So this, to me, is why she is so just maligned in this phony truth movement. Now let me read this to you before I get into the truth movement and what they've done to Helen. As I just said, I tend to associate the God of the Jews with Cronus. I do feel there's a little bit of a distinction in the Bible between Yahweh and Jehovah. But here, let's read this from Eusebius, by Barossa's History of the Ancient World, translated by Isaac Preston Corey, page 23. Here's what he wrote. They say that the first inhabitants of the earth, glorifying in their own strength and size, and despising the gods, undertook to raise a tower, whose top should reach the sky, where Babylon now stands. But when it approached the heaven, the winds assisted the gods and overturned the work upon its contrivers, and its ruins are said to be at Babylon. And the gods introduced a diversity of tongues among men, who till that time had all spoken the same language, and a war arose between Cronus and Titan. But the place in which they built the tower is now called Babylon. On account of the confusion of the tongues, for confusion is by the Hebrews called Babel. So there it's revealed that Yahweh, God, during the time of the fall of the Tower of Babel that was built by the Titans, was Cronus. She was right on about that. Now, just to wrap this up, I do feel that Helen's been maligned and slandered and libeled by these so-called truthers, these truthers that got onto the internet with Alex Jones and pretty heavily went at it since after 9/11. And I feel most of this truther movement was just a setup. It was just a psyop to cover the tracks of who did 9/11. And it was controlled from day one. I think anybody that was honestly telling the truth was murdered off. And you could be Jewish too and be murdered off for telling the truth. Mae Brussel and her daughter are perfect examples of that. She was exposing the pedophile rings and the Church of Satan's involvement, Michael Aquino, Temple Set, and the U.S. government and neocons. She started to get into it. But Bill Cooper was also a big one, and he was competition for Alex Jones, and people like Rush Limbaugh said he was one of the most dangerous men in America. And then what happens? He gets killed. And there's been a lot of other honest truthers who've come over the last 200 years who've been telling you what's going on over and over, that have been murdered off right and left. Helen Blavatsky is very lucky that she was not killed. She did die in her 60s of the flu in the hospital. So she revealed quite a bit. The way that she wrote, I think it was difficult for an average person to understand and get in and continue to read through her material, because it was very meaty, very verbose, and some of the lingo that she used is just unfamiliar to the average person. So I think she is maligned because of what she wrote about the Jews and their god Cronus, their Saturn worshippers, and that Satan is Prometheus and Zeus is also part of this godhead. But she was also writing about androgynous hermaphroditic races of Atlantis and serpentine Nagas type races. Now, many people could say that was symbolism, allegory. Maybe. I don't think so. Every time I read her work, I see more and more what she's saying. It's like you have to read her books 10 times to start really getting into what she was trying to reveal. But again, she was also limited by what was available at her time. She didn't have the access to the internet. And if she had had, that and these books out of the Loeb Library and the British Library, she really would have been a force to reckon with in today's society. Probably she would have been killed. Had she been really as strong as she was and determined as she was. Now, as far as her worshiping Lucifer, she did call, I think one of her magazines, the Lucifer or something. But at that time, they called matches Lucifer as well. Okay, yeah, that could go back to Prometheus, the god of fire, who is Satan. Yeah, you've got an argument there. Right now, I'm not 100% seeing that she was some kind of Satanist. I don't see anything that she participated in any kind of satanic ceremony. To me, she was a combination of Christian and Hinduism and Buddhism. Now, I want to point out that her organization, Theosophical Society, still exists today. And I did ask to present my material to them, and I said I would present it for free. They're in Wheaton, Illinois, and I offered to go down there and do a free presentation, and they just flat out refused me when they found out what my material was. So I believe her organization, unfortunately, has been hijacked. They're not interested in the truth. What they're interested in doing is parading around priests, rabbis, and clerics and New Agers and some Hinduism to keep their organization going and to maybe get donations. They're not interested in the truth. If they were interested in the truth, in my opinion, they would have let me present, and they would have started to really work on what I have and go forward and help me out. Because that was what Helen was trying to do, was get at the truth, just as I am, just as you are. I'm not a Satan worshiper. I don't worship Lucifer or any of that. I just want to know what the truth is. This is the journey I'm on. And as I've told you, I got on this path because of my children's books. Helen, I don't know what got her on this path, but she was on it and she did what she could. And her works are still out there. They can't get rid of them. But they're so esoteric and meaty and verbose. Unfortunately, the average person doesn't go out and pick up her books and read them. And like I said, it may take me 10 more times of reading her stuff to really dig out a lot of passages that are telling me something incredible. But so now I'm going to end this part of the series. And we've looked at what Helen Blavatsky's contributed. And as I said, she's revealed the same thing I have, that the Cronides are the backbone of the Semitic religion, but that there were some kind of mysterious hermaphroditic beings that were Atlanteans. And I've told you Atlanteans were associated with Iapetus in my work of my Hidden Human Story series. And she began to reveal serpentine races as well. So she started to get into some of that. And it's very interesting. So let's continue on with this series. Thank you.